Welcome to the Be Connected podcast, where we're sharing ideas and insights into the world that's shaping us. So AI, it's the big buzzword that's around right now. But really, what is it and what should we be thinking? We have an expert today, Meg Price, who's actually designed her own AI app and now is doing a PhD on neuroscience on the effects of AI and human flourishing. Not only that, she has over 30 years experience working in HR and doing coaching and development, and has a fantastic insight into how this is actually impacting the way that we work, the way that we think, and the way that we interact. And this is a great episode for anybody who's thinking or wanting to understand AI and how it might affect you at work, but also how it could affect your family, as now we have the next generation now interacting with this. There's a lot of discussion in regards to, could this be the same impacts or have unintended impacts like social media has on the way that we actually operate? Let's dive in, guys, for a very interesting conversation. Hi, Meg, and welcome to the Be Connected podcast. Thank you so much for joining us today. So, look, Meg, firstly, we're going to have a bit of a chat about AI, the brain, and also what impact this is having on work and also the way that we're living and thinking as well. So, let's jump into it. So, Meg Price, you are studying a PhD, is that correct, in AI and human flourishing? Do you want to explain a little bit of that for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you very much for having me, and always happy to talk about AI and human flourishing. So interesting for me. I have a background in human resources, organizational development, and about 5 years ago got into AI and developing an AI coach. And one morning I woke up and I had a little bit of an ethical dilemma. I knew that the coach was doing a good job. I was getting some great feedback from people talking about how they were using the coach. But I woke up and I thought, what if, like social media, the thing that I'm creating has unintended consequences and I'm creating a wellbeing coach, but what if potentially I'm harming people? And I wish that ethical dilemma went away, but it didn't.
It's good that somebody in tech's thinking like that. I know somebody else doing a PhD on ethics. Yep.
So that led me to, I started looking into it and doing a little bit of research, and it's led me to here doing now a PhD, really looking at maybe not the unintended consequences, but who do we become when we talk to AI? So there's a lot of research that's done on how AI can be more productive, how it can be more efficient. There's now some good research that's much needed on the environment and the environmental impact of AI. But there's a real gap in what happens to us when we have a relationship with AI. What's happening to our brain, what's happening with the way we relate to other people, the way we relate to the environment. There's some people working in this, and luckily there's getting to be a few more, and that's the playground I want to play in.
Well, let's talk first about what is AI, because I've seen, it seems to become the massive buzzword. I was doing something the other day and it was marketed one thing 12 months ago, and now it's like, oh, AI this. It's like, okay, it's all touching on, this is the it word at the moment. So go into us a bit about what artificial intelligence is, the whole history of it as well, and where we are today.
Well, I'll keep it pretty brief because it'd help people get to sleep if you knew too much about it. But artificial intelligence has been around for a long time, and certainly, as we've been looking at AI in different applications since the 50s, if not a little bit before. But I think what really has got to be the buzzword, and the reason we're all using AI today, is because we're using large language models and generative AI. So that's stuff like ChatGPT or Claude, or the stuff that you're talking to. Whereas before that, we didn't have this. We had a version of AI, but it just wasn't quite so human-like and interactive. And then the big difference was we had all sorts of different AIs, and people were developing AI for image recognition, and people were working on text AI. And with certain developments of these large language models, they worked out that they could basically get all of these AIs to speak the same coding language, so that when we had developments in one area of AI, we then got developments in other. And so the growth of how this has developed in these large language models is incredible.
And essentially, AI is just learning from itself. So every single time, the more data points that you put in it, the more people you get to use it. A little bit like social media as well, the more the network effect. But in this case, you have a machine literally learning off, you've done this, your style. And I already know in what I use, it becomes quite personalized. You can even say to it, use my style, once you start putting things into it. So, is that Is that what we're seeing? Obviously, in the last 12 months, it's become this big thing and everybody's sort of really starting to interact with it.
Yeah, so first off, it learned from everything that was in the internet.
Mm.
And there's a lot of debate around this because it learnt from people that have written books, authors that didn't necessarily want their books put
Yes, that's
into
right.
AI
Yeah.
systems.
Copyright.
Artists, music, all sorts of things that, is it fair that all of this stuff has been turned into AI? And then once it then came out into the public, yes, it started learning from us as well and what we put into it. So now you sometimes see the image of this sort of snake eating itself. Is it going to keep there's a bit of a black box around all of this. We just don't know how it's going to keep learning and what it's going to keep learning. And remember that AI is everything it's learned is from the past or what you've put in. It doesn't think like a human, doesn't think about the future. It can't have emerging thoughts. It can create what seems like critical thinking, but it's still just on what it already knows from what's out there.
Okay. And so what are we thinking where this will be heading in the next sort of, 5 to 10 years or 20 years, let's put it? That's probably the biggest one.
I think that, look, I'm an optimist about it. I think there's going to be a lot of positives. I think AI will be hugely helpful for areas like healthcare, medicine, mental health, not just the generative AI, but other forms of AI in terms of medical. I think it'll also have some problems.
Is that about linking that much research and making it? Because that's what I heard. It's going to be like the 40%, like how quickly they can do quick sort of reiterations and looking at different.
Yeah, and it can learn like things like you think about X-rays and people now. We all come, and AI comes with its bias and its things, but AI is going to see things because it's a pattern recognition machine. It's an algorithm, so it's going to see things and potentially detect cancers before the human eye can do it, and detect patterns. So it will do a lot of really good stuff in the world.
Yeah.
I still go back to the social media. It's going to have unintended consequences that could potentially be harmful for us as humans. And it's not that it's a secret, but it doesn't seem to be very well known how much energy AI is taking. So if you do a Google search now, and you just want to find a few websites or whatever, and you can see that you get the AI thing at the top, a bit of an AI summary. That is costing a huge amount to the environment. You didn't ask for it. You didn't necessarily want it. You get it in your Google search, and it's hugely environmentally unfriendly.
Oh, look, and I mean, we know this because, in the built industry, data centers are one of the largest areas, exponential growth. And I know my friend, works in government and with tech. And, the biggest thing is, obviously, everybody needs to consider once we do all of this, that has to go somewhere. And everybody talks about the cloud, but they don't realize the cloud is just a bunch of servers sitting somewhere. There's got to be near a power source that needs heaps of heating and cooling. And anybody in the industry who works in data centers will well and truly know. And this is why I think we're seeing that expedite all the way through. And that's obviously the next thing, in the same talk about crypto and what's on this, everything. So let's just go back a little bit of a step and talk a bit about the social media and impact that that's really had and what they're finding on. So what I found quite interesting when we've talked about a little bit about the empathy levels and things that we're seeing, the trends. So, you've got kids who are just finishing school and into university. I've got young kids, we're at different stages, I don't think we're that far apart where we are with next working generation apart, right? So let's talk a little bit about that, particularly as what you've seen in organisational development and in HR throughout the time, and now what you're seeing from history to where we are, and then where we're sort of seeing in a prediction of what the potential concerns are moving forward.
Yeah, and I think I often use the social media idea a lot because I think back and think, what are the questions that we should have been asking when social media came into the world? And I go back to that 2004, 2005. What should we have been asking? We thought, this is a really interesting technology. It's going to connect us. It's going to make us less lonely. It could keep us all connected. I didn't know at the time in 2004, 2005, that Facebook was collecting information, all sorts of information about me, not just on Facebook, but off the platform, on my computer, on my phone, on all sorts of apps that I didn't know Facebook could connect into. It was gathering that information so that it could sell it to advertisers. Now, the best people that they could gather information with was those that were vulnerable and children. And so then children would start seeing if a young girl talked about a body image or something, she would get an advertisement like that. Now, can you guarantee the AI that you're talking to is not gathering information from you on or off the platform that you're using to one day sell that to someone?
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't guarantee that. And that's where I say that social media has had pluses and it had minuses. And I know that generative AI, and I often say generative AI because it's the stuff we talk to like ChatGPT. And I know from the coaching AI that we've built, we get people that say, this is great. It was non-judgmental. It was there when I just needed to slow my thinking down so that I could think about what I would say to the person. They get a lot of positives, but I also know that Google is currently being sued by the mother of a 15-year-old because this 15-year-old formed a relationship with an AI that after a few months suggested to this boy that he could join her in her world. And he died by suicide. And that was the last thing that was on his phone was this conversation. So that's why I say this is not an easy, this is such a big problem.
Let's talk about, before we go probably to the extremes, let's talk about the day-to-day of what we're sort of seeing. So I think social media is a fantastic example of this. I mean, I have whilst I've used social media, I do have a limit on what I do for it. And if somebody else could, do more of it, then I don't have to. I find if I have to use it, I'm more interacted. Quick your feedback. But I notice a lot of my friends and a lot of other people are on social media. That's their down. They literally get on. It's quick. Like I literally see somebody at their gym. They sit down and Instagram's open. I'm like, wow, isn't that incredible? That's the first thing. So let's talk a little bit about what we have seen within the effects on the human brain and empathy and interaction that we've seen from social media. And then let's have a bit more of a chat about what we're thinking that might start to have an effect on how we're actually interacting in the workplace as well.
Yeah, and maybe it's going to be the similar sorts of things. So we know that social media was there to help us connect more, but we have more loneliness globally than ever before. We have a lot more mental health issues. People, when I grew up and I missed out on going to a party, I didn't see, like maybe somebody took some photos and maybe they went to the cost of getting them developed. And by the time that happened, it was so long after. I had no FOMO because I didn't know what I was
Meg, you're really showing your age, aren't you? When you had to get it developed. Whereas I used to have the digital, when I was 21, that's when the digital camera came out and you used to take that out with you. But, it was the early days of MySpace and Facebook was just starting. Yeah.
But you think about your kids, they're going to know. So Snapchat is a perfect example because it's a social media and it's got an AI component to it. So if none of your friends on Snapchat are around, you can talk to the AI. But on Snapchat, which is designed for kids, they can know where all their friends are. So they can put it on and go, oh, good, my friend happens to be at the local park. I can go and meet them or whatever. But they know where each other is all the time. They know what they're doing. They know what they're missing out on. This sort of stuff is not necessarily good for us. And in some other ways, some kids might go, this is great because I am able to connect. There's the pluses and minuses.
Well, I think the thing is that we do notice is the way that it's changed our behaviour. So it's not just social media, but it's the smartphone, essentially. Nobody even, most people go to the toilet with their phone, right? Yeah. They don't really stop. Nobody's sitting at the bus stop not looking at their phone. You weren't watching anybody in the line, they're on their phone. And I think we really need to make conscious efforts because we know that cognitively speaking, if we're constantly doing that and this dopamine hit, they're designed for that and the scrolling and the color and all of those types of things, let alone then hitting on to the human natural social wanting to connect and do that. So they're designed literally, your phone is designed to keep you engaged. Yeah. Social media is designed to keep you engaged. And I think that's the hardest thing. Now, I'll tell you a personal story. So, we're a bit of a chatty family, as we call him in the house, ChatGPT. So my partner gets ChatGPT out the other night and says, hey, can you, Chatty, we're trying out this new feature where you can talk to Chatty. And so essentially we have a conversation with the kids. We're like, hi, kid A, kid B. I'm not going to disclose my kids' names on the podcast, but, essentially we've got a 3-year and a 4-year-old here. This is what they're interested in. Can you do it? Great. Comes back. This is it. Even got to the point could actually tell the kids a story. So it's pretty incredible. But the point is that even at that age, my kids are like, can I get Chatty? Can I get Chatty? Can I talk to Chatty? So we can already start to see the starts
Yeah.
of potentially what this looks like. At the same time, it does turn into a potential, we're going to see this come on more and more of that potential
Yeah.
coach, like you've
And
sort of talked about.
and this is the interesting thing. Now, I believe, and hopefully we'll research this, that we can design and create AI that is good for us and good for our brains. But if you think about social media and technology in any way, there's a really interesting. He's a psychiatrist, philosopher, incredible person called Dr. Ian McGilchrist, and he has looked into a lot of neuroscience and a lot of work when people have lost function of certain parts of their brain. So he looks at this left-right hemisphere, not the pop psychology that used to be,
Yeah.
this side was created and this, but he's looked at what happens when we lose certain parts of the brain. And he was talking about modernity. So in this sort of modern world, we're working a lot with technology. What's happened in our brain is we have this left-right hemisphere, and they do slightly different things, but they have to work in together. And a really flourishing human will have the right brain as the master. So his book is The Master and the Emissary, because he talks about that our right side of the brain is the one that looks at context. It looks at the bigger picture. It can understand empathy and beauty and all sorts of other things. And the left side is the one that then goes and gets things, grabs things, and then you can go back to the right brain and go, okay, have I got the right thing for context? So you should be going right, left, right in your attention. But the way that technology has been built to, as you say, grab our attention so that we keep on it and they can make money, is it's attracting just the left side of my brain. I just want to get there, get that dopamine hit, do whatever. And I'm starting to lose the use of, this is why they say this whole, it's the race to the bottom of the brainstem. We're trying to get stuff that we just get your attention on the left because I can keep your attention. But the problem is that's not where we humans excel at. So what's happening is as we use technology, we're actually becoming more and more like technology. And we know that our empathy skills are down, our compassionate skills are down. We have a wellbeing crisis globally. All of this stuff a lot of it is because of the work that we do now on technology. So much of us are, how much of the time you spent on your phone or your computer or stuff, and how is that affecting your brain? And then what I'm interested in, how does that affect how you relate to other people at work, at home, elsewhere? And you got little kids on this technology. We often talk about the body and the brain. You hear people saying, oh, I need to shut off all the apps in my brain. We talk like we're a computer. We're not a computer.
No, I think we've forgotten that a lot of the time. And I think
No.
I think that's going to be one of the things. So what I was very interested in was our empathy, right? So if you want to use the left and the right brain sort of analogy, or the logical and the emotional brain, and I know they talk about that. There's a great book, and you're talking about helping children to connect those and how important that is. Skinner, I'm going to get that incorrect. You know which one I'm talking about. We can quote it in the notes. But in essence, it is that part that does make us human. And what is obviously we're doing is we're retraining our brains in what we do. However, if we look at all the talk around what the future of AI is and what the future of work looks like with AI, it actually is the most important part is going to be how we deal with humans, because the computers will do that faster than we can do it, right? So if we keep training our brains to be more the servants of, we think we're the master, but are we actually the servant of the technology? But we actually have to realize how important it is that we can continue to grow that empathetic level of things. Now, and I get it, especially when you're stressed and there's a lot going on, all of those types of things. And then you take a cognitive load where you're exhausted and you've got emails at you all day. I mean, I really look forward to the AI that's coming in and helping in emails and communication. It's going to be great. But the other side that we sort of talked about that was, is it actually starting to make us dumber, or is it actually making us, starting to train us to be more used to getting instant answers? So I know that even, Chatty's got to a point where I'm going to be back to you in a moment at that, because I think they found that everybody expected an instant answer. And even the system needs time to think. And now is that changing what we're expecting from people to be able to produce? So tell me a little bit more about what you've sort of found or heard in that way.
So, and it absolutely is the way that we talk to technology. So this whole idea about relational intelligence, it used to be emotional intelligence, but you think about relational intelligence and think about this with technology as, and I've probably bring three areas into relational intelligence. One is presence. The amount of time I see people, my family included, myself probably included, in multitasking. How many times do you see people sit down to watch TV, but they've also still got their phone or their iPad?
My partner does it. It drives me insane. It drives me
So does
absolutely
mine.
insane.
So does mine. It does drive me insane. We're no longer we're not good at being present, at here with the person and in an embodied way. When we're losing a lot of that art of truly being present. Also, really caring for the person and what they have to bring and what they have to say, because we're just wanting things to be quick and efficient and I've got to get to the next meeting. And then also this, in relational intelligence, this holistic awareness. So it was interesting. I was listening to the CTO of Microsoft. We're talking about AI, and she said that she was talking about coaching AI, and she said, you'll notice some of the AIs have started to change a little bit. And if you look at Claude does this, I think, quite well. They now talk, Claude, when you speak to Claude, will speak more coach-like. Before it just gives a quick answer like Chatty does, it will say, so what's the context you want around? Tell me a little bit more. What's the context you want this sort of answer? And I think that will be the future of AI. We need AI to talk to us in a way that gets us to be a little bit more critical in our thinking, reminds us that we're humans. I don't even mind if I have a pop-up saying, hey, you've been talking to me for a long time. How much time have you actually spent talking to a human in an embodied face-to-face way? I know we probably don't want those pop-ups and they'll be condescending, but how do we design it so that, we just don't get sucked into going, it's easier to talk to AI? We've got mostly a whole lot of young boys in the ages of around 14 to 20 that use something like character AI, which you can talk to all sorts of characters. And this is the one that is being sued at the moment. But you can speak to your YouTube AI person that you want to speak to. You can speak to Spider-Man. Your kids could get on and speak to Kung Fu Panda if they like, because there's an AI for everything, and you create one. So what we're finding is these young boys are forming these AI character girlfriends. And they're going, great, because of course the AI girl, her, something like that. So but the young boys, and they're going, oh, okay, I can create an AI girlfriend. She says what I want her to say, because, AI Chatty, they're all very nice to you.
God, a real woman would be so
always
annoying.
Saying, and they can get enough porn on the computer too. So there is now no need to have a real girlfriend, because they say, because life is messy. Relationships are messy. She doesn't say, yes, you're a great person all the time. So why don't I just stick with the AI? And what they did is they did some research to show that our young boys that are using these sorts of AIs are now more misogynistic than before, because we're creating this cycle of boys not wanting the messiness of life. That's why we go to AI and we talk to it, and because it's non-judgmental and it's not messy and it's going to say the right thing to me. What does that mean for us?
How do you think that starts to work into workplaces? And how do you think that starts to, because, we're seeing that at that age, and that's one part. How does this now start, do you think, over the next 5 to 10 years? And we're doing a predictive thing. We've got no real idea here, obviously, but sort of looking at the trends.
Hopefully AI some of it will change. I think the trends are now is we know that we're not as present. The majority of coaching work that I still do, face-to-face coaching, and actually have an embodied experience with people, is they'll say, since COVID, we've lost our team dynamic. We've lost the connection. Even when I get people into the office for 3 days a week, they got earbuds in, they're on the computer. We don't really do lunches. We don't do stuff together. We don't walk around the block and talk to each other. So we know connection's a problem. We know we're not really talking about stuff, because people go into meetings usually looking at their phone, and they don't get off their phone till the meeting starts. So there's no, hey, did you go to the football on the weekend? There's no small talk. There's no chats. That's a big part of psychological safety and having trust with the people that I work with. And we're not creating moments to build that. And AI then is going to be worse, because at the moment I've got somebody that I work with. Well, he's got an AI that does do all the summary of his emails. So sometimes he sends it back to me and said, because I've sent them, a long document, and he'll go, can you tell me, was this summary by Copilot correct? So, yeah, I guess you're only going to read the summary now, and you can get your AI to give me back a reply. But if you go back to psychological safety and my relationship, if AI agents are going to be doing a lot of this work, if we don't choose to step back and keep forming connections with people, we're going to be in trouble.
Well, and I think that's actually the most important thing, is actually how we do stay connected. And look, it's one of the reasons that I love working in the built environment, because it's actually you can't build a project with just one person. I mean, your husband's an engineer and actually has built massive things as well. So there's never one person.
He's not a big AI fan, probably. He does use it for things like policies and stuff, but he's the old-fashioned type of engineer who actually wants to be in a room with people. He wants to go to the office. He wants to see people. He wants to walk around the building. He doesn't want to do it on a video screen. But is he also one of the older generation of engineers? You know, he's approaching more like retirement. What does that mean for the people that are coming through? Is that going to be different?
Well, and what I'm also interested in, you know, obviously now if we look at the generations, right? So you've got my kids preschool, you're going to have kids kind of coming to school, you know, now it's an iPad. You just have to have one at school. I'm like, okay, right. And then you go into your high school, and obviously now, you know, and you also tutor, and you also are marking papers yourself, and you can kind of see using their AI on it. So I
know who's used AI and who hasn't used AI. And it's interesting. I know my kids, when they use AI and when they don't use AI, and they're university level, and I'm hoping, in a way, and it depends how we design AI in the future, but I look at certainly like my nearly 24-year-old almost rejects the use of AI while she's doing her honours work, because I think she doesn't want to lose the critical thinking and the writing ability, because she thinks if she uses the easy option, you know, if you don't use it, you'll lose it.
Yeah.
So she actually, and even I've got a younger one who's studying engineering, and they will all talk about the environmental impact of, because I gave them the hack. You know, I think I gave you the hack so that if you don't want to have that AI summary that comes up when you do a Google search, you just throw in a swear word, and the AI, it mucks up the whole AI algorithm. So if I'm searching for restaurants around me, then I just put a good F word into that search, the AI disappears, and I just get the web search. It's some hack that, anyway, the point being,
that's a bit more concerning what that's going to come up for you. But anyway.
I don't know why that is, but it's good to have a bit of colourful language in there. But I wonder if we will. There is so much technology and so much problems with social media. I kind of wonder if there'll be a certain younger generation who turns it a bit more and says,
certainly be.
I want to go backwards.
I mean, I was talking to somebody who said to me that their eldest literally is just on the phone all the time. So their second child is literally just like, I don't want anything to do with the phone and social media. So it's very interesting as a social experiment, sort of watching a family. But that's different. I mean, what do you do? That's exactly right. And I mean, Meg, to be honest with you, you built an app with your kids based on positive psychology when they were little. You know, this has been your entire world. I can't imagine that wouldn't have an influence. We're talking majority of the population.
Yeah.
We all want the easy path. Like, our lives are so easy that's why stoicism and things like that come in, because, you know, we need to make things harder. I mean, I bloody have a cold bath every morning. Yes, I live in a hot environment, but sort of like to wake me up and, you know, alert you, because my life's so bloody easy. I can turn on hot water. I've got power. I didn't have power for a few weeks. And that was you notice the difference. But I think obviously in our behaviours, we literally are a creature who is the least amount of force and the easiest thing to do that we want to do. I think we're going to have to be very cognitive of, as you're saying that your children are, to actually be like, this is a tool and this is saving me time in this way, but what am I going to be using this additional energy, or what is the value that I can bring? And I think that's the biggest thing I was sort of mentioning before, that, you know, I find that the industry that I work in is great in that way. People they have to interact. You know, that's most of the time when things blow up. It's because people aren't interacting well. So sometimes a bit of ChatGPT to, I'm angry with my email, pop it in, and can you make this sound better, might actually help move things along a little bit quicker. But at the same time, as you said, if you don't use it, you lose it. And we know with the brain, obviously, it is always about connections. You know, it's constantly making connections. And, you know, if you damage one part of your brain, you can regrow that. You can learn anything. Essentially, we have the best computer in our heads, but it's not a computer. It's a human brain that needs oxytocin, that needs connecting, as much connection as we do just
Yeah.
analytical and dopamine. And obviously, if we talk about, and I'm interested to actually get that from you, obviously, you know, with social media, we are so dopamine heavy, and now we're giving ourselves more instantaneous.
Yeah.
What are we seeing? Because as I've said, I think the way most people are going to have to do is human interaction. Our ability to read people is actually becoming our more important skill. And what's we
Yeah.
have to keep investing in people from graduates all the way up to leaders. Because, by the way, we never get perfect and we're always tired and things come up. But how do you think, you know, that's going to affect and what people should be focusing on for the next 20 years and be cognizant of?
Yes. I wonder if I'll
Oh,
still
you
be
can give
around.
it the 5 first. Why don't we do
I
5,
think,
seeing as we're talking 2020 when we were talking about Facebook?
yeah. Well, that's why I often say in 3035, what will we look back and say, I wish we asked these sorts of questions? And I think about the students. So I tutor a course in AI and human flourishing for university students, and they range from engineers to med science students because it's a breadth subject. And I was just thinking about that when you were talking, because even like the guys that work in construction said to me, AI is really useful and they use the tool for certain things around policies and things. But of course, I've got them really researching into how useful it is. And a lot of them have come back and said, well, you know, I ask it what it thinks, you know, your job is, does it ring true with how you've been studying? They might be doing engineering or project management, architecture. All of them have come back and said, interestingly, it doesn't talk about safety. It doesn't talk about, you know, humans and certain things. It gives a lot of the sort of overview and it's fairly correct. But the bits that were missing, they said, these are the bits that are actually really, really important to humans that were missing in some of the conversations they had with AI. We got to the stage where we've been sort of talking about in the tutorials, talking about how do we ensure, and this would be the same with your little kids, and I think it's the same in any workplace, is that AI is a tool that we need to be mindful in how we use it and when we use it, and why we're using it. You know, have
Mm.
that choice and agency and responsibility for what we're doing with it. Because who is it? It's Esther Perel, or you know, the relationship expert, who is great because she talks about artificial intimacy. But she'll say that the quality of our relationships influence the quality of our life. Now, if most of our relationships are online through social media or with AI, what is the quality of our life going to be like?
Mm. And it's quite funny because when you look at I very much into health and well-being and, you know, our brains and peak performance, all that type of stuff, and they've talked about longevity. And they've found that in the studies that, you know, they talk about the Mediterranean diet is that, you know, one of the best diets. However, it's also the factor, and I've talked about this with friends, you go over to each other's houses and you don't, you know, it's nice when we do a community barbecue and you're doing something and you're actually cooking together. Well, I also believe not only is a Mediterranean diet actually found, I think it's also the community aspect. The people go over in families, you're handing down what you're actually doing. There is that, you know, you're interacting, but you're also doing something
Yeah,
together. And those factors are harder in health to be able
yeah,
to measure. Yet we are humans who need tribes, who need to connect. And that's why, and you're probably going to tell me that's why we are seeing such a problem with well-being, you know.
yeah,
And we talk about this well-being. We are in the best, we have the best food, we can go anywhere, especially in Australia where we're so lucky, but at
yeah,
the same time we're suffering probably more than we ever have mentally because we're not getting the innate things that we actually need to be able to do. I mean, I try to go to nature every single day, whether it is into the bush or to the beach, because I got burnt out and, you know, wasn't good mentally, and I know what I need within that way. And
yeah,
that's those interactions that we need to kind of see those genuine parts. So,
yeah,
and I think that's it. We look at workplaces as one of those places, but obviously what we're doing outside. And I think we've
yeah.
got so much entertainment these days and so much things, we're not necessarily taking that, as you said,
We don't go out,
that
no.
present
No, because
moment.
that embodied experience, as you say, if you're cooking together, you're eating together, you are together. There are chemicals that go between us as people.
Mm.
Now, we don't get the same thing on a Zoom, but we don't get all of that. So we're missing out on those sorts of chemicals that we actually need for our brain and well-being. So you're right, it's not just the food. It's
Mm.
the company, it's the connection, it's when I'm sitting down with somebody as a, an embodied relationship, different things happen to our brain. And again, I think because of COVID and working from home, we've actually lost a lot more of that. And then, as I say, there's people saying to me that they think when they get to work, people are just at their computers. They're on their earbuds. They're not. And then they still have meetings, but their meetings are still on Zoom or Teams because not everybody's working from the office that day. And again, so I'm getting none of that stuff that my body needs for my well-being. And you're right, I'm then not going outside, I'm not walking. So, and AI is not going to help that if it's just another tool. And also if we're having a relationship with this thing, because AI, we're not clicking on technology anymore, we're talking to it. It's talking back to us. We're having a relationship. How we talk to it will influence how we talk to the next person that comes into my room, on the next person I'm on Zoom with.
And I found that very interesting when we had a pre-chat a little bit about that. How you talked about social media, you used to click on, we used to clicking on things. Here's an app and we do this and you follow this. Yeah. Whereas now you can put something in and it comes straight back to you. Chatty can tell you a story if you want to. But essentially, how is this actually now going to? It's great in some ways, you've got something, but again, it's not a person. So, and I think that's one of the things that people just have to be very cognizant of. You need to know how the human brain and the body and everything works, that you actually do know that integration. And I think it's also, as you said, it's about that presenteeism. So I think one of the biggest things is, how do we get that culture back into our organizations? How do we bring that? Well, if we actually understand how the human brain works, we actually understand what we produce when we're actually doing it. It's actually the cultural activities or the learning and training and development that we have into being able to connect. So, your tutors when they actually come in, because I know a lot of university now is done online and a lot of things are, and that is still really important. But that interaction of where we can actually touch and feel and build genuine relationships. I think that's the other thing, because we talk about that in layers of relationships that we can have: first, primary, secondary, third, and beyond. But what's the genuine? How many people can you call up if you are sick or you need to go to hospital to take you there and to do that?
Yeah. And I think that's probably the biggest problem with where AI is going at the moment, is it's a productivity and an efficiency tool, and we want to teach it at schools, we want to use it in the workplace, but we're losing sight that productivity and efficiency doesn't make well humans. It is not the ultimate goal that I get to my deathbed and go, God, I was productive. I was so efficient most days. That's not where we want to be. So how do we mindfully realize that when we're at work and we have those conversations in the tea room, or that they are actually, they're the gold. And we seem to not have forgotten, but we seem to have got so busy being productive and efficient and finding tools to make us more productive and more efficient. And we get straight on a meeting on Zoom. As I say, there's no small talk, there's no water cooler talk. We're bringing graduates into a workplace where they don't get to listen to more experienced people have these wonderful conversations. We're just being more productive and more efficient. And I can tell you now, that doesn't drive a good society. And then what happens if that's all we're doing and we're creating this AI? As one of my students said recently, well, this is all really great global north stuff, but then if we start bringing this into all sorts of other countries, and most of this AI is developed by middle-aged men in the USA, are we going to get this sort of culture globally that is this bland version of AI? Because we're going to, we used to put, Gates and people were great at putting computers into schools in Africa. We're going to start putting AI into all different types of schools and places for learning and business in potentially global south. Well, what culture does that bring? So I just think leaders have this is such an important moment in time where I know it's not necessarily easy, but all I need to do is go back to being human and taking time out to be human. AI will be a great tool if we're mindful about how we use it and bring it into the organisation and talk about it, have discussions. I always say to people with kids, talk about it. How are you using AI? Have those discussions. Our kids sit around and their friends come out and we'll get to just talk to them about how they use technology and what works and why they don't like it and why they keep going back to it and all sorts of things. Why don't we have more of those conversations in the workplace?
I think it is those interactions, those human interactions, and having those the real people connection that is
Yeah.
always very important. And look, I mean, I started a business, and ours is a remote first business because it's about, enabling, especially for
Yeah.
working mums, the ability to be able to do that. But there is that part, right? It's exactly right. So it's how you are connecting and doing that. And we have a lot of, we obviously, what I do from an HR, so we run an outsourced HR company. That's a big part, is what are we actually doing? How are we supporting people?
Yeah.
How are we actually helping people through? And that's the other part, is, and how are we actually helping leaders to be good people leaders at the end of the day? Look, I think the thing is with AI, obviously, we could all do ourselves out of a lot of jobs, right? But what are the things that are going to remain that you cannot outsource to AI? Yes, it will be able to calculate things quickly and do that for you, or come up with multiple iterations. I mean, we work with a lot of design firms and architecture firms, and there is this big, oh my God, what is AI going to do? Now, I've seen amazing AI being done. Look, at the end of the day, we're talking about different algorithms and write this and come up with these different iterations that you can do.
Yeah.
But the design process and what is at essence is still there. It's just able to produce quicker parts. However, I do wonder what that's going to have on expectations of people as they're going through, that I want to see all these things without the actual understanding and thinking of actually what's behind.
Yeah.
I can see the same happening for engineering, being able to do calculations a lot quicker, being able to work things out. But as you said, it's you've got to understand it's still not the same as having somebody who's actually checking and having that knowledge. And it'll be very interesting to see how this emerges over the next, 5 to 10 to 20 years, if you talked about with social media, and how this is actually going to affect us. One, as you said, productivity is important, right? But it can't be important to the point that people are unproductive because they're miserable and they don't want to go to work, and there isn't that connection.
It's turnover and
that's right. And essentially workplaces are tribes and communities and what we're connecting, but we're trying to come out with an outcome of what we do with that. So look, it's been a fantastic, very interesting chat, obviously, around different things. And I think, our brains are our brains. We're looking at, that's how you got into this, because you're actually doing a PhD in neuroscience, isn't it, first? And then on AI.
Yep. I always say to people, when you look at your AIs, choose your AI, especially coming from an HR background, choose your AI like you would have chosen your personal assistant. You go to quite a lot of trouble to find somebody who's going to come and work with me. If I'm going to get a personal assistant to come and work with me, I'm going to make sure that I trust that person. I'm going to make sure that we get along. I'm going to make sure that they're not going to sell all my data to somewhere. I'm going to make sure they've got similar values. I'm going to make sure, they're the type of person I want to work with. But we go and chat to AI, any AI, without thinking, is this AI good for me and good for what our business wants? And are we talking about that? So always think about, you're going to have this, AI is not neutral. You have a relationship with this thing. Decide what type of relationship you want and what type of AI is going to help, advance what you're doing. Because it should be a tool that helps you. But I wonder if it's because we've lost a lot of that ability to be really mindful, present, have that critical thinking about what we're doing. And that's when, if we're going to teach people in workplaces or schools more about AI, spend triple whatever you're spending on that, on relational intelligence, emotional intelligence, getting back to the basics.
Well, it's quite funny. I mean, we see the biggest costs in professional services firms are people first, and then we see it's on technology and technology, the two second biggest things that we see. But what I find hilarious is most people just look at it, I'm paying this person, I'm paying their salary. They're not thinking about what I'm actually paying to make this person a better person to interact with our team a lot of the time. And I mean, you've worked in organisation development and training and development for years too, and we know it's great for big organisations. Whereas I look at it as an HR person, I go, well, it's just part of, you have to buy them a computer. You need to do the same type of thing. What are we actually doing? How are we helping people to continue to do that? And what are we actually investing in making the people part of the business work as well as the technology part of the business, or, paying for the design studio to be done up? That's a really important thing, I think, as well. And I think that's where we're going to see over the next, as much as technology continues to increase, the way that we interact, the way that we understand people, understand ourselves, that empathy level is only going to continue to increase. I was quite surprised, I'm not going to lie, that I thought with everything going on in schools and education, that we would see higher empathy levels. But considering what you've mentioned about social media and our interaction, that our emotional intelligence seems to actually be decreasing.
Yeah.
And I believe it's also because we're so exhausted cognitively.
And we don't have a set way to teach that. We have a set way to teach maths and English and certain things, but your EI skills from teachers depend really on the teachers and their emotional intelligence. Now, most teachers I know are burnt out. They are doing far too much with far too little, and they don't have enough to. How can we expect those people to have the time and energy and have their brain in the right place to help teach these children? This is where
Especially
I
when
think
it's like a 1 to 20 or 1 to 30
yeah,
relationship too. Like, we're not talking a
we
one-on-one.
expect so much, and parents then have expectations that the schools are going to do all of this. But this is really hard. I think it's just a really difficult moment in time we are in this current era of having all this stuff that makes us more productive and efficient, but actually we have so much less in terms of human connection and really having our brains that have a sustainable human flourishing.
So just to finish on that so everybody understands. So what is the definition of flourishing when you look from a neurological or wellbeing perspective?
There, and I'm not going to remember the one that I want to in the moment, but the interesting thing I do, instead of asking for the definition, which is I'm going to get you to do something and any listener to do something, is to just close your eyes for a minute and think about a moment in time where you felt like life was good. This is good. Things are going well. It might have been a short moment in time. Just have a think about when was it that you thought, oh, really, this is great. Now you can open your eyes, but think about who you were with. What were you doing? Was it with technology? Was it not with technology? That's when I often say, because there's all sorts of different definitions of flourishing. It's broken into lots of areas. But I often think about, when do you feel like I'm living the best of my abilities? And what were those moments? Now, for me, that moment, and I've asked lots of people, some people say, I was on the tennis court with my kids, whatever. My moment, whenever I've done that, is when I'm sitting around the dinner table with my family and we're just eating and laughing and being stupid, or I don't care what's happening. That's my moment. That's my human flourishing moment. There's no technology involved. Sometimes there might be for people, but that's when I go, it's a feeling. And so when you start to measure things like this, which we try to do with wellbeing and flourishing, we take it back to left. We take it back to AI technology because we break it up. But flourishing is a holistic feeling. It's not a up and measure it, because once you start doing that, you've just gone back down the AI left brain way of thinking.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we know when we're doing well, we feel we're doing well in our positive mindset. And other days we can have, we're in the everything's bad and those types of things. There's that line essentially in positive psychology of what's thriving and surviving type mode versus that. And we're very lucky these days. But yes, essentially a lot of what we do within burnout and what we're doing within technology and that is not designing for our brains to do that. I can tell you my flourishing moment when you ask me is literally just sitting at the creek near the beach where I live and watching the sunset. We do a fishing if it's during the week or if it's on a Sunday night.
You're outside.
But that's me and nature. So that's
and
a really
lot of
big
people.
part.
You ask a lot of people, and everybody's just different. But then they get the sense of what flourishing is. And I can't have those moments all the time because that's not realistic. But if I'm getting a lot of burnout or anything else, how do I just increase those little moments of time when I can reflect and go, that was a good moment? Can I orchestrate life to get one of those today? Yeah, probably I can. It might be 5 minutes. But if I can't find 5 minutes because I'm busy on my computer, then something's seriously wrong. So that's what I call flourishing.
Brilliant, Meg. Thank you so much. That's been fantastic. Now, a little bit of a throwball. You meant to get this in your pre-notes of if you were to give people a hint of a book, a podcast, or something of content that you think would be a great thing for people to go off and do and to listen to get their mindset onto a certain way, what would that be?
The podcast that I really love around technology is a podcast called Your Undivided Attention. It's created by the Centre of Humane Technology. So they're the guys that wrote The Social Dilemma, and they interview all sorts of people about technology and AI as part of technology. But they have some really interesting guests, and it is very much about the future world and this technological world. So because I really like podcasts because I could do it when I'm outside. I can do it walking when I'm in the car.
I do it while I'm cleaning. Great. Excellent. Brilliant. Well, thank you, Meg, so much for your time and a very interesting conversation today. We hope that's helped.